Let's jump into some email action then. Is that what we're doing? I'm just gonna dip my ankles in it.
Yeah. Ooh, ankles, very risque.
It's time to go through the bag. All right. I will read said emails. So I'll start. All right. So, dear Allison, what motivated? Yeah, I know, but I mean, it may appear to be directed at you, but I think that we can all talk to it, unless he specifically says no. Only Allison can respond. What motivated me to write this email to you was your recent heartfelt speech in defense of the term men's rights advocate / activist in Rant Zerker number 49. It may not rate as an eloquent speech, but it was one that made me genuinely think and feel that Honey Badger Radio is something that I should put my financial assistance to. However, I did feel a sense of skepticism thanks to the rancid stench of feminism having overstayed its welcome. Feminism claims its goal is equality for women, and by their constant shifting of the goalposts and never declaring what they want women to be equal to, they have managed to maintain a sense of relevance. I am aware that MRAs lack an ideology, but there are still principles and goals. So my question is this. Though you may always be an MRA, at what point would you feel comfortable to say that being an MRA is not the most important thing in your life, and how do you intend to get there? I do get the feeling that the men's rights movement will not put as much effort pushing the pendulum away from the center of gender politics once equality has been achieved. However, I do worry that the MRM may become the very next feminism without some sense of moral or ethical self-awareness. Of course, I could be wrong. Signed, most sincerely, the Rude Horse. Well, it's really nice that a rude horse would be so sincere.
I'm pretty sure it's faithfully if it's not your real name, isn't it? No, if it's not that person you're talking to. Oh, whatever.
No.
Thank you.
Oh, yeah, because sincerely does suggest something that a pseudonym, following by a pseudonym, doesn't really follow through with the sincerely. And it sounds like I'm making fun of this person. I'm not truly doing that. I just always sound like I'm being sarcastic.
Yeah, I get that a lot as well. You got a couple of good questions, though. One's an easy answer. At what point would you feel comfortable to say that being an MRA is not the most important thing in your life? Now. And at all times. It never has been. I'm principally an artist. That's sort of why a lot of us are here. It's not so much because of personal circumstance and more because, it's one of the things we think is important. In my case, anyway. And even if all of our goals were met tomorrow and men had all the rights that we say they need, I would still have shit to do, and that's making videos on YouTube. That's getting shit across. So that's the most important thing I do.
Yeah. I'd have to add on to that. Yeah, it's at this point in time, I don't feel like being a men's rights activist or advocate is the most important thing that I do. I think it's an important thing that I do, but for myself personally, the most important thing I do is create comics and write and draw stuff. Actually, my writing is my favorite thing, and I would define myself primarily as a writer, and then also as an artist and a person who creates artwork. So those are my primary definitions. As you can see, they're all related to an action that I take in my life. Men's rights advocacy is not less something that I would define myself as. It's something I feel that needs to be done. And, if I don't set aside my particular passion, then how can I expect anyone else to? And then where are we in actually addressing these issues, which I feel are need to be addressed? And the other thing is that just to discuss the term men's rights activism and an act of advocating for men's rights, I am really leery of calling myself an egalitarian or an equalist or a humanist, because I don't want to simultaneously claim to have a focus on men's rights issues and to a lesser but no less important degree women's rights issues, and also claim to understand equality. Because I think that's where feminism really falls down, because they simultaneously say they advocate for equality and define it. And I would prefer that other people look at my actions and decide whether or not they bring about equality than myself, because I feel like you can't simultaneously act and be judged for that action. That's what feminism seeks to do, and they've sort of fallen down a lot on that particular issue. So I'd like the judgment of my advocacy as being for equality to remain in the hands of someone besides myself. And the way that I feel that I would feel that equality has been achieved, or my aim of men's rights advocacy is achieved, and that we need to stop is if someone gives me a really, really good reason why we've now attained equality, or present some really good evidence of that, and it's a very incisive argument that I can agree with. So that's my spiel on that. I think it's a good thing to separate advocacy and action towards a particular end, and judgment of that action if that attains that end. So I will advocate for men's rights. Somebody else can determine what equality is, because I think it gets a little sketchy if you're doing both. If you're saying, yeah, I advocate for equality and I also determine what it is.
Yeah.
That's my spiel.
Well, that makes sense. Max, do you want to say anything to the question?
Well, yeah, even though it was directed towards Allison, I'll just give my take on it. This might make me the pariah of the panel, but I am actually not an MRA. I don't identify as one. I am actually, Get
out!
John!
No, but don't worry. I do advocate for something else. I'm actually a yellow rights activist, not to be confused with Asian power or Asian nationalism. I just advocate for the rights of citizens everywhere. But no, seriously, in terms of the things that I value in regards to the work that I do, either on YouTube or with you guys or in real life, I tend to prioritize everything rather equally, because my values, I sort of hold them on the same level playing field. And wherever I feel like somebody actually has issues that need to be attended to, or somebody needs somebody to fight on their side, I'll make sure that I put as much effort towards that as I do to anything else. I mean, obviously, when it comes to friends and family, I'll prioritize that above anything in regards to my work. But yeah, you get the idea. So that's my spiel.
Okay. And I'd like to essentially agree with what Allison and Mike were saying. It's not the most important thing in my life either. I was just a guy who wanted to make comics, web comics, and tell stories that I wanted, and really I got kind of dragged into all this as a consequence of daring to talk about things that people didn't want me to talk about. And that actually brings me to the thing that I find that's interesting about the fact that we're all artists, or at least we sort of tend to have more creative interests. It's that
Wait.
What?
Does Max identify as an artist?
I think Max is an artist, right?
No, I'm not a visual artist, but I love music, I love movies, I consider those forms of art, and I experiment in those fields.
Yeah.
I see. Well, I can accept the fact that you're not a men's rights activist, but I'm not sure I can accept the fact that you're not an artist.
No, honestly, my drawings are absolute crap. They look like they belong on refrigerators everywhere. It's just, they're gross.
But let them be on refrigerators then. But is a refrigerator not yet but another gallery? A gallery that people look upon every day when they go to get, cheesy string or whatever out of their fridge.
It's like an inside out white cube.
Yeah.
All the people who've gone through art school know what the frick I'm referencing. The white presumably white fridge is the reverse of the white cube.
It is.
Of the gallery space.
Yeah.
So maybe you are a trans artist. Wait, that's probably got some interesting connotations.
It does.
That's really deep out.
You're a trans-dimensional Simpsons Kent artist. All right, okay, I'm sorry. I derailed your thing there, Brian.
No, it's okay.
I recently sort of realized how weird it is that we all run a radio show, and we're all visual artists. We got a couple of comic creators. We got Hannah's a photographer. Terry's sort of a cam girl and all that sort of
cartoon costumer
and all that business, and Karen's a fiction writer. We're all essentially mainly visual or literary artists, and we've all found ourselves talking on the radio for a fucking living, when I think we'd all say, it's not really my thing. I mean, the only one who nominally should be any good at talking is me, and I'm the only one who's not.
Well, as a drama
it's,
major. Yeah.
It's like this idea we've always had that some jobs should be given to people who are reluctant to do them. Politics in particular. Well, jury duty is the one we actually follow through with. We have to say maybe we should do that with politicians as well, not give it to the people who want to rule because they're dodgy. And I looked up one day and I was living that rule as well. The people doing a radio show are all the kind of people you would not expect to be doing a radio show.
I'm actually astounded. Like, I was saying this to Brian this morning. I'm like, what the hell happened? I never thought that this would be what I would do. I always thought I would be like a writer. Well, I hoped. Or even, I don't know, maybe a consultant on environmental design or something like that. That was a very thin hope. But, being a radio host and talking about politics and activism, that was like, whoa, where the hell did that come from? And it's so funny because I recently read a comment on our channel and they were talking about this kind of activist stuff and political agitation, and I was like, yeah, this would be great, but I would want to wait till we found someone who had those talents, who had those skills, who had that ability to organize this kind of political stuff, because most of us, we're not lobbyists and we're not activists. Even Hannah pointed out how effective Gamergate's ad hoc organization of lobbying is. And it's like, why don't we do that? And that would be great. It didn't occur to me that was something we should be doing, because I'm still steeped in the mindset of relaying information through text or through art, that it didn't occur to me that that this is something that we should pursue. And of course it should have, but like I said, this is I would not have guessed. If you asked me when I graduated art school or when I graduated in my master's, if you told me, hey, you're gonna end up on a political show talking about politics, and you're going to be doing that somewhat for a living at this point, I would have been like, what? So I didn't nothing in my background prepares me for this. So to the guy who mentioned that to comment, your suggestions are fantastic. I'm sorry that we haven't implemented that stuff yet, and I'm really hoping that eventually we will find someone who's interested in that kind of thing, organizing that kind of thing, has experience with that kind of thing, who might want to climb on board. I mean, I hope one day we get an actual activist.
Yeah, right.
Or lobbyist, If you're listening and you are one, or you feel like you'd like to pursue that skill set, topic@badgerpod.com. Anyway, back to you, Brian.
No, it's okay. Well, the last thing I was going to say is about art itself. So yeah, I don't think it's really an accident that those of us who take an interest in this do have a bit of a more creative brain, or an interest in it in some way. And I think it's because great art throughout history has one of the things that it's done, whether it was on purpose or on accident, in retrospect or whatever, was it draws attention to topics and subjects that are not clearly visible to most people. It starts people thinking about things that they normally wouldn't, and that are considered sort of fringe ideas or new ideas that people hadn't considered. And that's what art has always done, whether it's intentional or not. If you were Hieronymus Bosch and you were making a painting about what would happen if you didn't go to church every Sunday, you were trying to say something with your work purposefully. But if you were someone like Van Gogh, who didn't know what the impact of his work would be, but he was just making what he wanted at the time, he was still sending a message that people look at now and they reflect on, So I think that with taking that into consideration, it's quite possible that people who are artists are, even if they don't want to, they're probably among the best qualified to expose people to these truths, these ideas that are not easily visible to most people. So I think that I'm just, to add on to, and to also considering why I think there are a bunch of artists and artist types making this content. And I mean, I don't think that Honey Badger Radio is the only one. I think there's actually a lot of creative people that are just in the sort of vlogga YouTubeosphere making stuff that are artists too in some capacity. So that would be what I would add to that. Hopefully that makes sense to you guys. I don't know.
Yeah, it does. I once talked to Mike about what artists like. That artists maybe are the type of people who go into a place where there's absolutely no rules and figure out what the rules are.
Yeah.
And that's maybe why we're drawn to all of the stuff that everybody else runs from. So maybe you're right. You know, it's just it is the bleeding hearts and artists who end up beating their hearts against some mad bugger's wall.
Yeah, another thing is that artists tend to look at if you see like a social or cultural landscape, and there are holes, gaps, there are things that don't seem to make sense, things that seem missing. An artist wants to fill those spaces. It's like you said, going to a place where there's no rules and trying to figure out what the rules are. So if you go somewhere and like everyone's talking about what's wrong with women, or what's all the suffering they're going through, or all of the adversity they suffer from, I think that our artist-minded people are going to be like, but wait a minute, there has to be another side to this. Or is there another side to this? Let me look. Let me explore that and find out what people are not talking about. You know?
Yeah, people like having answers, but artists don't. I mean, artists are people, but artists are people who've trained themselves not to see things in terms of answers. Like the next step is not necessarily going to happen in the form of an answer. Because when you produce art, it's not about finding answers. I don't even know what it is. What is it?
Posing more questions, I think.
Yeah. What's the next brushstroke? What's the next project?
Mm-hmm. All right, so let's go on to the next letter. Ben writes, Hello, HBB. Huge fan and all that. I want to address the recent spat between Mike and Sargon. Both during the hangout and in his comment on Mike's follow-up video, Sargon stated that feminists have turned the term MRA into the boogeyman, just as they did with Gamergate. They've also done it the same way, by intentionally misrepresenting and outright lying to form the narrative. In both cases, this happened because they encountered resistance. Someone didn't kowtow to their demands, and as we are all well aware, the feminist fallback position is, you must be misogynists. In Gamergate's case, there were enough developers who knew who their audience was, that the antis in their media machine never gained much traction. The MRM doesn't have that kind of support, because it doesn't come down to a group like game developers ultimately deciding whether or not to make their games lame. The MRM is about the hearts and minds of everyone, not just some content creators, which is why Sargon's suggestion that this protracted culture war can be over as fast as Gamergate is erroneous. We have seen the strides the MRM has made in the past couple of years alone. It is not a stagnant holdout, as Sargon implied when he compared the MRM to the 300 Spartans at Thermopylae. It has gone from being invisible to people like Mike Buchanan and Karen appearing on mainstream media, trouncing feminists in debates, and or having their positions seriously considered. People are starting to listen. Hell, even Mr. Yada 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 himself has recently given his support to some MRM issues. There is no need to change any label to take a different approach to the problem, as Sargon put it. The fact that feminists are slandering the MRA label and intentionally misrepresenting the MRM is evidence that these things have value. They would not smear en masse that which is not a threat. Also, it's strange that someone who flatly states that you should never apologize to an SJW would turn around and suggest that giving them some ground could have a positive effect. Feminism is a cultural juggernaut, and the MRM is vastly outnumbered, yes. But this is not Thermopylae. It is Agincourt, and gentlemen in England now a bed shall think themselves accursed they were not here.
Yeah, I think...
Go ahead.
Sorry. I think you made a very good point earlier on when you said in Gamergate's case there were enough developers who knew who their audience was. And that was the point. Gamergate knew who its audience was. It was gamers. And gamers didn't exist till recently because gaming didn't exist till recently. That's why it was such a I suppose volatile phenomenon and vulnerable phenomenon to feminism. And the men's rights movement hasn't found its audience yet, but that's not because the concept of the rights of men has only recently been discovered. It's because it's just not been talked about for whatever reason. You might say it's been censored one way or another, which will perhaps explain why the men's rights movement is taking its time finding its audience, because that audience isn't just new and with lessons to learn. It's actually been deliberately kept under wraps for some time now. So I think that's mainly what sort of Sargon and sort of Gamergate sort of people are thinking, because Gamergate was so quick and was resolved relatively quickly in like a year or so. You think, well, why isn't that happening for men's rights? You got to do something drastic, guys. And they pulled this massive full Macintosh moment out of their ass. Now, what if we do the biggest fucking hairpin fucking swerve dodge of principles anyone's ever seen? No.
Okay, well, unless anybody else wants to go, I'll take it from there. I think that one of the reasons why men's rights advocacy or activism as a topic doesn't get a lot of play or hasn't, I actually think it's met its audience already. It already has an audience. But what we're expecting is a huge audience when what we've got is a population on a show recently I said of first adopters. And these are the most rarefied first adopters in the world, because they're not just adopting a new technology or a new medium or what have you. They're adopting a new emotional landscape that challenges a lot of what has come before it. And these are the kind of people that you'd imagine would be incredibly rare. And because they're rare, it's going to take a while to find a critical mass of them. And it's a slow process, but they're not just rare. First adopters are very determined and involved as well. So it's like they're I don't even want to call it an audience. I call it listening colleagues, but they're like the SEALs of the listening colleagues, or or what you'd say the public. They're like the elite special forces of the public. There's only a few of them that are going to be able to manage it. And I guess the elitism of that is unfortunate, but it's also sort of true. There's only going to be a certain number of people who are going to be able to manage the innate difficulty and discomfort of questioning some very, very deeply held emotional expectations in our society, that men be strong and women or men be responsible and women respond to men. It's like that's really, really dug deep in our psychology, in our psyche, and people who are going to be able to challenge that are going to be some pretty unique people. So it's gonna take a while before we gather up an audience, and it's actually mind-boggling to me, because Honey Badger Radio is now 27,000 subscribers, or getting there, and that's 27,000 of these very unique people. That's actually pretty impressive, that there are that many, and probably more as well, who can manage this kind of difficult feat. And so that's I when Sargon looks at us and says, "Oh, you're so small and petty and you don't have an audience," I don't know if he says that or thinks that, but I'm thinking, no, I think we got the audience we got the audience that we got, for what we are and for what we demand of our audience. And that's why I call them listening colleagues, not an audience, because it's like what we talk about is demanding. And being able to stick around and listen to it is a demanding task. It's not the same as listening to something entertaining. It's not the same as listening to something watered down. It's not the same as listening to pure anti-feminism either. Because something that is a competitor to an already existing brand still has that familiarity to it. I mean, if you're an anti-feminist and what you believe wouldn't exist without feminism, you sort of are in some ways feminist. Because you wouldn't exist without feminism. Your concepts wouldn't exist without feminism. But because we're not purely anti-feminist, we are building up a new market and we're appealing to first adopters, and most special kind of first adopters, the ones who can actually challenge themselves emotionally, we're not going to have a huge audience. But we will have a very determined, persistent, obstinate audience of listening colleagues. Okay, I'm done.
And many of the individuals in that audience will go on to make their own YouTube channels with bigger subscriber bases than us. And we'll sit there and smile and go, yay.
That's right.
You got through the obstacle course. Now you're out in the world kicking butt.
Max.
Okay. I guess I'll just respond to what Allison said about just trying to compare the reality of the men's rights movement along with Gamergate. Yeah, Allison was right in sort of just noting the fact that when it comes to men's issues, they're far more complicated and require much more consideration than what happened with Gamergate. With Gamergate, it was just sort of like a perfect storm of chaotic events happening at all the right times, and it was much easier and I guess you could say fun for outliers to access because it was just a whole bunch of drama to people who weren't directly involved with it. Whereas with the men's rights movement, it requires a lot of self-reflection. It requires you to question your values and the way that you perceive reality. So as a result of that, I obviously think that the movement is going to take a slow time to grow. But I think that when all is said and done, it will be as big of a thing as Gamergate was, as long as we have people that are committed to fighting the good fight, like you guys and the people that watch Honey Badger Radio and all other different outlets in relation to men's rights issues.
And I just wanted to add something on to what Max said. When people are examining, asking those uncomfortable emotional questions, this shouldn't be a situation like everything is problematic. There should be a sense of benefit or interest. I mean, even if it's a difficult task, it should make sense. It should be reasonable. It should be something that satisfies you on an intellectual level, that you feel that this stuff makes sense rationally. Like it's not just emotional discomfort for the sake of emotional discomfort, or emotional discomfort for the sake of whatever it is that Lacey Green means when she says that everything is problematic. There should be a purpose to it, and that purpose is to understand the world in rational terms and in reasonable terms, and in what we strive for as objective terms. And so, if you're somebody who's struggling with this stuff, there should be the satisfaction of knowing that it's rational and it is consistent with the evidence. So don't just be emotionally uncomfortable for the sake of being emotionally uncomfortable. That shouldn't be the goal either. All right.
So what you're saying, Allison, basically is that not everything is sexist, not everything is racist, not everything is homophobic, and we don't have to point it all out?
Yeah, I would say that probably, I've been, thanks to Brian, and very, very much thanks to the patron who's made this possible, I'm finally getting downtime. So, and I've been enjoying just reading stuff that is definitely not men's rights related. It's just entertainment, specifically for women in some cases, and science fiction and fantasy stuff. And it's all of it is like, there's stuff in it that is quote unquote problematic, but and I will talk about it, but at the same time, I still enjoy it, and I find it fine to just enjoy the stuff. And I like to talk about it not in terms of being problematic. I like to talk about it more in terms of it being eye-rolling and boring, and please stop beating that dead horse trope, because it would be so much more fun if you put some more creativity into it. But then again, I also recognize that authors only have so much creativity that they can bring to any one piece, so you can give them a pass for all the cardboard cutouts of the creepy perverts that they put into their novel and such. No, it's not gay porn, Max. It's it's almost as bad. It's science fiction romance and some regular science fiction. So there you go.
All right. Well, yeah, I mean, but gay sci-fi porn's fine too. If that's your bag, baby. All right, let's go on to the next letter. Touchant writes, "Hello, Badgers. So I've been listening to Rant Circle number 49, and you mentioned, as a response to another listener, if someone disagrees you using a particular label, you'd like to hear the reasoning why. Frankly, I don't have any contentions with it. I think you're absolutely right. In fact, in that very episode, you articulated exactly the things I thought I was probably the only one to see it as it is. That there is a clear distinction between women's rights activism, an objective action, and feminism, which is a belief system. Because you're more knowledgeable than me on the subject, I'm glad you were able to validate my thoughts. So yeah, I don't think there is anything wrong with calling yourself whatever you want in terms of transparent descriptors for your actions, because ultimately you're advocating for human rights, and it's just fair to do so. I do know, however, that the term MRA is also not just a personal label someone identifies by, but also usually a pit that feminists generally throw dissenters into. For instance, I'm not an MRA because I don't think I'm an activist, and to say that I am an MRA would be lying. But that does not stop almost every feminist, including my own friends, to label me as one in order to let everyone know I'm either a horrible person or probably have some mental illness or something of the latter. The term is deliberately used to discredit people and reduce their social currency, trust, and mar their reputation, and this is also done by non-feminists who don't call themselves feminists but generally believe in things that feminism wants society to believe. Knowing that this affects men more than women, and most men are scared of social humiliation and alienation, as I have been, I feel it is understandable for people to stay away from the label or even advocate for men's rights for their own sake. I also know that, because of this, it's also easy to compartmentalize the issue and justify to oneself to agree with feminist causes. The issue goes too deep that even the most rational of my friends would happily throw logic out the window and run away from even looking at or listening to the issues, because society has deemed it as extreme or radical. This is not a letter about me justifying ditching the label of MRA. This is me being sympathetic about why people seem to run away from the label, as well as advocacy for men and boys in the first place. Because for people who would have otherwise invited me to events and poetry slams because they genuinely admire my writing, have now suddenly stayed silent and kept me in the dark where the themes were about gender protest, taboo, culture, etc. Perhaps because they were worried that my views will taint their moral intentions in some way, or perhaps because they don't want my supposedly intolerant views to make others feel unsafe. Now that there is no going back, if I'm thrown into the pit of the label MRA, I will happily wear that label like an armor if it means that I can somehow reclaim the label, even if it makes me highly unlikable. But the only thing that's stopping me is the MRA abbreviation that describes both men's rights advocates and activists alike. And I don't want to take pride in shit I haven't personally done, such as activism. Well, I don't know why you'd want to go to slam poetry, but I think that I don't know. That's just I never.
Well, if they're playing these seedy identity word games with you, then I don't know. Get creative. Play them back. If someone says, "Are you an MRA?" ask them, "Are you a WRA?" See how much sense that makes. If they say, "Yes, I am," then you say, "Me too, and I'm an MRA too." And if they say, "No, I'm not," then I don't know. Go down that path as to why that doesn't become a fucking initialism. Because all they're doing is fucking about with whatever word trick will terminate the conversation. You know, 'cause if all they have to do is describe what you're doing as a noun, and that'll fuck you up, then that's what they'll do. If all they have to do is describe what you're doing as a noun and then turn it into an initialism, because that'll fuck you up, then that's what they'll do. Yeah. So I'm pretty sure capitulating to this bullshit will not win any argument, will not get you any truck. But to follow that down into the fucking matrix of lies and actually hit back with what they're doing is a very unpredictable realm, but it seems to be the only way to go. So play whatever game they're playing. Say, are you a men's rights activist? No. Are you a women's rights activist? No. You're a women's rights advocate, aren't you? Yes. Well, I'm a men's rights advocate. and the three letters that becomes the initial is MRA. Oh, you were WRA. No, yeah, none of these games make sense on the women's side of it, but for some reason they do on the men's side. So can we quit playing the childish little games with the letters and the words and have the actual discussion? Try and whirlpool it into that somehow if you can, because the more they resist it, the more stupid they make themselves look. If you can play it right, it's very difficult to trip up because they're very good at talking.
Yeah. Max?
Yeah, in regards to that whole game, yes, it is childish. But on the other hand, I think, well, I mean, I don't want to speak for the people on the panel, but when it comes to the people that do wear the label of feminist or do wear the label of MRA, and they do speak rationally and logically and sanely, we have a lot of respect for these people. Like, for example, I think one of the most beloved voices in our social circles is obviously Based Mom. You know, she calls herself the factual feminist. And part of the reason why we find, well, at least I find that so noble is the fact that she wants to try and reclaim the term feminism to be something worthy of respect, something that is worth spending your time on, like trying to bring up the self-esteem of women everywhere. And I think that if you want to do something like wear the label of men's rights activist, I think you should do it with pride, but also do what the doctor said and try to point out how silly of a game it is and how we should just be focusing on trying to argue the merits of our positions regardless of what we label ourselves as. You know, it's like, unless you're like a Nazi or something like that, I don't really think that whatever you call yourself should be an immediate discussion stopper. And that's really the ethic that you should be trying to go for. I don't know if that made any sense.
I mean, for me, I would actually add on top of that, if someone did identify as a Nazi, I think that would be a really interesting conversation. I would totally talk to that person just to figure out what they mean by that and where they get it from. I'm just a curious individual, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, 5 years ago I had no idea there was such a thing as a white nationalist, or that it was different from a white supremacist. I quite a lot of people, you know, their initial reaction would be, oh, racist. Clearly, white nationalist, definitely racist. But now, you know, now that we've listened to a few of the, you know, slightly more sane people from the alt-right, there's something of a difference between a white nationalist and a white supremacist, and you can't all just umbrella everything under obviously racist, you know.
No, we have to knee-jerk everything because that makes it all better. It doesn't actually harden the battle lines and ensure that the actual pressure you put on these groups who may not have the best ideologies in terms of implicating certain groups. Well, all right. I just realized I got myself in a trap there because feminism. Well, if they want to talk to us, they're welcome to. How's that?
Well, we've absolutely invited them on, and, you know, like we do all the time, so absolutely. I say, you know, I would not shy away from any conversation with anyone despite what their worldview is, because my interest is in trying to essentially sharpen my brain, right? And challenging your ideas is the best way to do that. Steel against steel or rubber, depending on how bad the idea is, but yeah.
Steel against styrofoam in some cases.
Lest we forget, the Fireside Chat was originally a format designed for Kevin Logan. The first 4 episodes was so we could sit down and talk to a feminist. That was the idea of that format. We just haven't had many feminists saying, can I come on for a Fireside Chat? That's what it's for, by the way, folks. That's why we have that, you know, essentially.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and since then we've just talked to other people who just have either an interest in men's rights or no knowledge of men's rights or and other stuff. So it's sort of become a chat format where we just bring on a new perspective. But yeah, feminist. If you're a feminist listening, you're welcome to come on the Fireside Chat. You know, if you like. We're hoping to get that recent feminist who's talked about his conversion from men's rights, being a men's rights, from being an egalitarian who's read 1.5 men's rights books to being a feminist. his conversion from that. We've been trying to see if he would come on, but we'll see.
You know what would get Honey Badger Radio a lot of traffic is if we somehow managed to get Steve Shives on one of our shows first before Sargon.
Yeah,
wouldn't that be funny?
It would be hilarious, but it'll never happen.
Yeah.
I mean, it would be great. You know, I would love to get Steve Shives on, or I don't know, Kate Brooks. I've tried to reach out to. I reached out to Edwin, the gentleman that we're talking about that wrote the long blog that you guys discussed in the last Rant Circle. Yeah, I've reached out to feminists. It's hard to get them on, so we'll see.
Shives will at least give a reason for not talking to Sargon. They'll just make up a bunch of shit. So, he's just dishonest. He's going into it with the wrong frame of mind. When it comes to us, he just won't even give us a reason. Just like most people, they won't even acknowledge that we exist.
Well,
that's how the levels work, folks. They come up with shitty reasons not for talking to the big people, and no reasons whatsoever not to talk to us.
I believe,
it's a very familiar story.
I believe one of the reasons that Shive said he wouldn't go on Sargon's channel to talk to him is because Sargon is an MRA, even though he's not.
Whoa.
All right.
Oh, man. All right.
Max, did you want to say something before I go to the next letter?
Yeah, no, I was just going to say it probably wouldn't be possible to get him on the show because he's blocked everybody on the internet, so it's never mind.
Oh, yeah. He wouldn't know if anyone was trying to reach him. Maybe we can go through his wife.
Yeah. I got blocked.
Send up a flare.
I've never talked to Steve Shives in my life, and I got blocked by him.
Yeah, that happens. Yeah, that happened with me and Leigh Alexander.
I might not be blocked by him. I still haven't checked. It's still Schrodinger's fucking block, whatever. If I never check if I'm blocked by him or not, I'll never know. So for all I know, I'm not blocked by Steve Shives, and I never will know.
Schrodinger Shives.
And this is all electromagnetism, right? So it's all subject to the rules of Schrodinger's cat, right? Okay, no.
Next letter. Volate writes, "Hi Badgers. I'm working on my graduate degree, and we had to post about the reciprocity principle on a discussion board. This was the conversation. My post, quote, look at the dating scene in a bar. Most women have no problem accepting a free drink from a guy, and if the guy wants to chat with them or even get their phone number, they feel as if it's perfectly fine to say they don't owe him anything just because he bought her a drink. Unquote. Is that unfair reciprocity? Was anyone taking advantage of in that situation? Would women ever spend money just for the opportunity to talk to men?" Female student response. "I see where you're coming from, but I believe that there are two sides to the story. From your point, in situations like that, I agree to an extent and think that some people take advantage of the fact that they're getting free drinks. If a man goes to a bar trying to pick up women, he has to be aware of the environment he's in. 1. You're at a bar. 2. You have a 50-50 chance of getting taken advantage of." 50-50. 3. He can't exactly be mad if she turns him down. 4. If a man puts himself in that situation and gets mad about it, I don't feel sorry for him. My follow-up. Quote, "I agree that some people put themselves in situations where they have a good chance to be taken advantage of, but some call that victim blaming. My conclusion is that women in general are just okay with men getting taken advantage of. They have to be aware of the environment and they put themselves in that situation, so you shouldn't feel sorry for them. The logic is sound until it gets applied to rape and sexual assault." Well, yeah, so that was the letter. I don't know. He's asking if this is unfair reciprocity, so I guess the only thing that I can say is that the whole dating thing and male and female relations and so on, they're not men's rights issues, really. They're not really related. However, if you wanted to just talk about it from a is this fair, is this unfair standpoint, I don't think that matters much, because it comes down to is it voluntary? That's the only thing that matters. If a man chooses to buy a woman a drink in a bar, he's making a voluntary choice. So he just does that. And that means he takes the risk that comes along with that. So, should a man get angry that a woman doesn't want to speak to him, I guess he can if he wants to, but it's, again, he rolled the dice and it didn't work out, and so it's time to move on. There's not, unfortunately, you're not owed a conversation because you spent the money. That's what I think anyway. You just need to either be more frugal and don't buy women drinks because they don't need them, or maybe you shouldn't be going to a bar to meet people. I don't know. I don't think that there's nothing happening here that is breaking any conduct or that is unfair in some sense that it needs to be answered to. I think it just comes down to how do you feel that men are taken advantage of by women for free drinks in bars? If you do, then maybe you shouldn't buy them drinks in bars. That's the only thing you can really do to that. So,
what is the name of the guy that submitted this?
His name is Volate.
Volate, I'm going to make this really simple for you, okay? Take that money that you would normally spend on buying drinks for women and learn how to invest. That way you can build a nest egg, you can get rich, and then you don't have to worry about all that stuff. All you have to do is just walk into a bar, yell out, "I'm rich," and all that really, stupid, unsaid body language crap will just go right out the window. Take it from your man Max.
And invest in the best birth control you can find.
Yeah. Just buy yourself a wallet made out of solid gold.
Yeah. That whole, that's just part of the buying drinks for women in bars thing, and then in the hopes that it will start a conversation is part of a ritual that's been going back a long time, but there's no need for you to participate in that ritual.
Here's the thing, okay, let's unpack the logic a bit of actually buying a woman a drink. Presumably you want to start a conversation, but doing something in the way it's usually done usually doesn't start a conversation. It usually ends a conversation. So right there, it seems like a pointless activity, unless she's already attracted to you. What I mean is that if you buy her a drink and she's looked you up and down, she says, "Yeah, I'm interested," and she's made that decision that she's interested in you, then what's the point of the drink? The drink isn't what's spurring the conversation. The fact that she's interested in you is spurring the conversation. So maybe asking her if she wants to buy you a drink might be more, because it's novel, it's unexpected, and if she's interested in you, then she might take you up on it. that might be another approach.
I would also throw out there, instead of buying a drink and then hoping that action creates interest, why don't you find out if she wants to talk to you, and then then you sit down and talk to her. If she says yes, and then if she seems interesting after talking to her for 2 minutes, which I think you can find out if someone's interesting to talk to after 30 seconds, then decide if she is worth a drink and then buy it. But that's it. Don't just buy a drink and then, this isn't, the movies where Ryan Gosling buys a drink for, I don't know, Scarlett Johansson at the bar, and it their eyes meet and they start talking. That doesn't happen in real life. So that's what I would say.
Just do your thing, bro. Just do your thing, and if anyone's interested, they'll come. And if no one appears to be interested, so be it. Just do your thing.
And if all else fails, just ask them how much a polar bear weighs.
There you go.
Please tell me somebody got that joke.
I didn't get the joke. I still laughed, though. Except my mic was muted.
It's enough to break the ice.
Oh, God.
That's adorable.
Okay, that was good.
That's cute.
Okay, so next letter. Touchant writes, "Howdy, Badgers. Karen has often explained the differences between what interests men and women by often giving examples of how her partner likes to discuss his interests with her, while she would insist that while she respects the skills and insights he has, she is not interested in participating with him in those interests. This made me curious because my ex-girlfriend, whom I'm still in touch with since we talk frequently, also generally isn't interested in superhero stories and comic books like I am, even though I'd love to talk to people about it in person and just safely fanboy with people without being judged. She wouldn't care about reading or watching any of those unless it's Deadpool, but sometimes she is generous enough to participate in those expressions and fanboyness, even though she often just flat out says no. Then, of course, there are things that she is interested in that I'm not, but strangely, I have a harder time saying no to. Don't talk to me about those things. Not because she would take it badly, she understands, but because I can understand the need of someone to talk passionately about something. So I wonder, is the need to passionately discuss and explore something and the tendency to generously listen regardless of your interests, how different are they between men and women? Or is this just an individualistic thing? Am I the crazy one? Well,
No, actually, this is something I've noticed as well, and it's something that never really occurred to me until someone brought it up. And it's in relation to my favorite TV show. And I was talking about it with someone. I was like, it was a guy, actually one of our patrons. And I was talking about it, and then eventually I stopped and I'm like, you know what, this is probably boring to you. And he's like, no, actually, you're passionate about it. That makes it interesting. And I thought about that, and it's like, I don't have that same mentality. And it's only something I've ever seen from men, is this idea that if someone else is interested in something, it's the passion. Or if a woman is interested in particular something, it's the passion that the guys find interesting. And to pull a page from maybe Karen's book, maybe there's something in that men maybe, because women tend to model how we're supposed to react to things. When you see a woman who's passionate about something, maybe there's an element of because she's modeling a feeling, and that's generally how we see women in terms of their reactions to things and how they. Think about a movie. The most common way of establishing a mood or how you're supposed to respond to a particular event is to immediately cut to a woman reacting to it. So we have this sort of, if a woman feels this way about it, other people adopt that feeling. So maybe that's what's going on. Or it could be more of that that theory of mind that men seem to have, because they are forced in a lot of ways to consider the female point of view, because they have to approach and they have to elicit desire because of their half of the mating ritual. So they develop, I think, a stronger sense of women's theory of mind than women really do of men, because women don't really have to develop a sense of desire in their partners. As soon as he approaches, it's presumed in their potential partners. So I don't know, it could be that, or it could be this idea that women tend to model our emotions, and we tend to respond to women's emotions by adopting them.
Yeah,
but
it could also be, in addition to that, there could also be a bit of when a woman takes a really passionate interest in something, and she wants to talk about it, and she wants to geek out about it or whatever, and she's talking to a man. He doesn't want to. I think that there is a desire to protect her feelings about that thing, so he doesn't want to say, I'm not interested in hearing about that, or that bores me, or at least he's less likely to, and instead he tries to find something interesting about it, even if he doesn't really have an interest in it. And the reason why I would throw that out there as a possible to add on to what you're saying is that if a woman is geeking out about something that she's really interested in, and she's talking to another woman who is not interested, that other woman will say, that doesn't interest me, that bores me. So when you're talking to Karen about your favorite show, Karen might say, look, I don't want to hear about that. So, but, someone like one of the patrons or whatever, they will take an interest in it. And it might be in part, yes, because they are fascinated by the fact that you're so passionate, and maybe they want to, some of that excitement, they want to understand it. I think that, because I think that men do have a tendency to want to understand the world around them, and part of that is understanding people. They get a peek inside of a woman because, it's sort of like she's allowing herself to be she's sort of letting go and like really getting caught up in that thing that she's interested in. And I think that men have an interest in that too. Even if they're not interested in that woman romantically, they just want to see that, you know. It's like they're getting like a bit of something that is so real in that moment that they want to experience that. So it could be those things too. I don't know, because I'm not thinking about it. I just thought about this now as I read this letter, and I have actually run into that myself, where, you know, a woman who is interested in things like makeup or food or you know, hair stuff or fitness or whatever, things that I'm not very well informed on, or I don't really have an interest in. I want to hear them talk about it because maybe I will understand why it's interesting, and I kind of want to understand that, even if I don't become interested in makeup as a result or whatever it is that they're talking about. I'm curious about why they like it so much, because then maybe I can get an understanding for it, and I don't mind that. So, but at the same time, though, if I want to talk about the things that I want to talk about, I'm more likely to run into, you know, a lack of interest. Like, oh, well, unless they become interested in the thing that I'm talking about, whether it's, you know, men's rights stuff or comics or whatever. So that's just what I've observed anyway.
When you were talking about that, another thing occurred, because it's really about being interested in another perspective, or being aware of and wanting to understand another point of view, which is, there's another instance, another example of men actually doing that more than women. And that's, you know, I've had, you know, regular interactions with the hospital over my lifetime, just like a normal human being. And what's interesting is I have found multiple occasions where female nurses seem to have this failure of understanding that there's a human being attached to the ministrations that they're doing. So I've had nurses, like, for example, one example is I had to get my ears cleaned out because I had an accumulation of wax. And this nurse spent like 5 minutes jamming this ear thing into my ear over and over and over again. I'm like barely trying to hold in, like, just yelps as she's doing this. And she's like, oh, I can't do this. And so she goes, gets my male doctor from the time. And he looks at my ear, he looks at, you know, and he very gently inserts it, angles it, you know, spends some time figuring out the right angle, and inserts it really careful, gets it, you know, first try. No pain. And I'm like, wow, all she saw me as was some sort of flesh obstacle she had to pierce with the ear thing. And that wasn't the only one. There's been a time where I've had to have an IV put in, and the nurse would be like, the female nurse would be having this needle, and she'd just be poking it in, and she's like, oh, you don't really have very good veins, poke, like multiple fucking times. And I'm like, you know, I am a person here, that this really fucking hurts. And then there would be like a male nurse who just sort of pops around the corner and sees this and is like, okay, well, do you need some help? And I'd be like, oh, thank fuck. And he'd get it in, because he would be and he would do it very gently and carefully in a way that suggested to me that he knew that I was a human being that was actually feeling stuff, rather than like a plastic replica of an arm that she was trying to get in to find a vein in. And it was like literally the nurse was almost like she's trying to dig a vein out of my arm. And at that point in time, I was so relieved, because the male nurse actually got it in one try. And then there's another point in time where I had this tubing coming off of me in a very delicate area, and the nurse would just sort of like grab it and tug it. And again, it was a female nurse. I'm like, could you not do that? And each time, this is my consistent experience with female nurses, they don't seem to get that you have nerve endings, or that there's another person attached to what they're doing or involved in what they're doing. And yet, when I've dealt with male nurses or male doctors, they seem to get that instantly and are very aware of it. And I just wonder if that has another thing to do with the fact that we teach men to understand that they need to appeal to women and recognize that there's a mind there that they need to appeal to, especially in the mating dance. And in general, you know, with feminist rhetoric, this idea that men need to be aware of women, be more sensitive to women, understand their problems. And this isn't a new idea, this is consistent. You can see that in chivalry. You can see that in the behavior of men towards women in the 50s, of not getting fresh, of keeping their... all right, so where was I? So it's like this idea that I think men have an awareness of women that women may not have of men. And so there you go. Go ahead, Max.
Yeah, I was going to say, was just sort of going off of what Brian was saying about how relationships, healthy ones, really come down to how the two partners appreciate each other's basic human values. You don't really have to show an interest, like share an interest in one common thing, like the viewer said about superheroes, or like Brian said about makeup and costuming or whatever it is. What it really comes down to is the passion that they show for these things and the drive they have and the goals that they set for themselves and how hard they're willing to work to get to those things. That's what you develop healthy relationships off of. And that's certainly what the case is for my current girlfriend. Like, we don't always share a lot of common interests, but because we're able to allow each other we're allowing each other to learn as much as we can about each other. It's through that we can build the more positive experiences instead of just agreeing on everything all the time and everything just sort of resembling what Brian said about that stereotypical Ryan Gosling, Scarlett Johansson-esque situation, right?
Yeah. And, that's one of the things, too, is that I think that your partner's willingness to understand that, like some people enter a relationship and they think that what has to happen is we have to have all the exact same interests. They have a very, very specific model of what their ideal mate is, and that ideal mate shares all of their hobbies and interests, and they're like, they're just gonna match up in that way. And the reality is that that's just not like practical. It's just not going to happen. You're going to meet someone and there's going to be some overlap because that's probably how you became interested in each other in the first place, but they're going to have their own interests and you're going to have your own outside, and it's actually probably good that is the case because you can sort of grow from each other's additional sort of interest spheres, social circles, etc., and you can become probably a more well-rounded person because they might have some interests that you don't, and then you have some that they don't. And they don't have to do everything that you do. But I think that one of the things that is that could be something that you miss out on, that could be a problem, is if she or he doesn't have any interest in the stuff that you like, to the point where they don't even want to hear about it at all times, because that could, in the long run, you will be needing, or at the very least, if they don't do that, they should allow you an outlet to go and do that somewhere. That way that you don't feel like you're sort of molding yourself, the person you are, to better fit into the package they want to put you in, or when they say, don't talk about that anymore, or I don't want you to do this, engage in this hobby anymore, I want you to be the way that I pictured, or the way that I would like you to be. And that self-erasure thing, you have to stay away from that. So, because you're not going to be happy in the long run. You're going to find that, you're not going to be happy with that. So, and I know that you can find people that are willing to listen and talk to you, or at the very least will respect your interests, even if they don't share them. So, anyway. Yeah, Mike.
People relax in different ways. Not just men and women. I think it's reasonable to say men and women do relax in slightly different ways on average. And different individuals relax in different ways. One person's relaxing is another person's opposite of relaxing, invigorating, animating. Some people are relaxed by heavy metal, some people are animated by it. And what comic books are to you might not necessarily be the same thing that these that these things are to your lady friend. You didn't specify any of those things are, but often it's not even a simple black and white issue of animating or relaxing. Often it's a combination. I mean, reading comic books is a combination of relaxing and animating, but it's a different combination from the things your lady friends like. Much like it's a different combination for all people. So figure out what people are actually getting from their favorite hobbies and their favorite things. Figure out which buttons they are in fact pushing, because you might be lining things up slightly wrong.
Yes.
Or something.
That is, and then you can sort of tune in on what it is about that thing that once you know what that is, maybe there is something there that you guys can share. It may not be from the same stimulus, but you can at least relate on that level that there is this thing, When you recognize the passion in other people for stuff, even if you don't have an interest in that actual activity, you can actually respect it due to the fact that you have a passion yourself, even if the events, the things that stimulate it are different. All right, so moving on to the last letter. Lucian has made an inquiry. Hello, Badgers. It's been a while since I've last contacted the Badgers, but I found a few more things to say about an embarrassing topic. So I'll just be blunt and say I'm talking about masturbation and the Nofap community. In short, the Nofap community claims that there are great benefits to abstaining from masturbation for a long time. There's just so much conflicting information out there about the benefits or harm about masturbation and long-term abstinence from sexual contact. Okay, I gotta stop for a second. I didn't even know that there was such a thing as the Nofap community.
I'm looking it up now. I just googled it. It's real. Obviously, it's real. Well, there's enough results to suggest that it's real. It's often this one word.
What do people?
Capital N.
What do people in the Nofap?
Please don't.
No, it's
don't feel compelled to share
just photos of like people in suits, probably not doing anything, particularly not fapping. What do the? Okay, well, whatever. I wonder what people in the Nofap community talk about in their community. Do they just talk about the thing they don't do? Like I don't understand.
Sort of like feminists talking about men constantly.
I imagine it's a bit like abstinence place or Alcoholics Anonymous or something. It's people talking about how they deal with not doing that thing they used to really like doing. It sounds, it's probably quite a big thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
No pun intended.
My name is Max Darrett, and I haven't fapped for 134 days, 22 hours, and 14 minutes.
Well, you beat me by 142 days, 14 hours. Okay.
Don't.
Can you people speak up a bit?
Okay.
Last
letter, almost done. Okay.
Continue.
Now, I happen to live in a rural area with extremely limited opportunities for social contact. In that going an hour or two into town to a couple of local bars is the only option for socialization around here. Not exactly an ideal place to meet a nice person. Hell, if I know what such an ideal place would be, considering gynocentrism and widespread female narcissism, I might be sending letters in the future about more specific questions in this regard before moving to another topic, but I just really am struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff when it comes to the claims about masturbation being good or bad. What do you think of the Nofap movement and their health claims? It looks like everything is testimonials, which obviously denotes a sampling bias. I'm abstaining from masturbating because it allegedly helps with getting more energy and feeling less pain. And in my case, I have suffered from chronic migraines for a very long time. It's only a week into it, but I feel horribly depressed, lethargic, and extremely irate. I am extremely stressed, and that's a fucked up situation for me, since I have no social support network in my living situation to help calm me down. The honey badgers really understand facts about sensitive issues like this, and I know you can make more than a few comments on how masturbation is socially shamed and how men are degraded for not pursuing women on bent knee. I feel like I should apologize for asking about a subject that is a bit gross, but all aspects of male sexuality are gross in the modern lens, aren't they? I trust that the honey badgers are level-headed about this sensitive subject and the confusion surrounding it. Thank you for your time, Lucian. Okay, I'll go first. First of all, Lucian, it's not gross to fap. I mean, I think that actually, I don't think that we've lived, well, maybe that's not true. In the modern age, I think that people are more accepting of masturbation today than they have been for a really long time, if not like ever. Because of the internet, everyone understands. I mean, like, the internet itself proves, just if you search for anything, you will find fat material, no matter what. Rule 34 is actually evidence of that. Well, I don't think it's gross, even for men. That's the first thing. The second thing is, this might sound a bit like a pun, but I'm not sure that abstaining from fapping completely is healthy, because men need the release. It could be true that excessive fapping is bad. I don't really know. Maybe it should be done in moderation and at a certain rhythm so that you are allowed enough release to so you don't feel stressed and upset and stuff. But I'm not a scientist or a doctor. I just go ahead.
Well,
Speaking of
one
doctors.
one thing I need to know is this third from last paragraph. Is that a quote, or is he quoting someone else, or is that actually what he's saying? The one that starts with "I am abstaining from masturbating."
Yeah, I think that's what he's actually saying.
Is that actually what he's saying? Right. I'm abstaining from masturbating because it allegedly helps with getting more energy. ... It's only a week into it, but I feel horribly depressed, lethargic, and extremely irate. I am extremely stressed. ... So, okay, what that right there is an experiment that has somewhat quashed those allegations. Yes, this is why I'm a little bit sort of wary of this letter, because that paragraph, if it's what you're actually saying, is the answer to your own question, is it not? I mean, they say allegedly helps with things, and then you've tried it out for a week, and it's proven to not help with these things at all, which makes sense. I mean, do it as often as your body tells you you should be doing it, which could be anything from never to quite a lot. Yeah, I think this is one of the ways your body speaks to you in not necessarily uncertain terms. And if that paragraph is true about yourself, then it's speaking to you. I'm not going to give you any advice that you're not giving yourself. And given the evidence of that particular paragraph, I wouldn't be doing my job if I didn't wonder slightly if I need to apply Poe's law here.
Oh, it's Lucian. Wait, yeah, it shouldn't be. It should be. It's probably pretty sincere. Like there could be two things happening here. I mean, it could be a situation where it is you're overdoing it and it's withdrawal from an activity that you enjoy quite a bit. But so that could be happening, or Mike is right, and it's just stop vapping. I don't know. It's my personal opinion is try it out, see what you like, and do that. Like I just recently changed my diet quite a bit, and the first 2 weeks were not fun. But once I got through it, I have been experiencing more energy and a lot less fatigue and feelings of sickness. So sometimes it's just the initial getting used to not doing something that you're used to doing is a little difficult. So, but that's something that's entirely up to you. I would only be concerned about the Nofap community is if they are actually being stigmatizing or shaming people for engaging in masturbation, because then that would suggest there's some interesting psychology going on there. And they might be pressuring people to not masturbate because they actually want to, and for whatever reason they feel ashamed of it. I don't know. But that's all that I would have to say. I guess it's pretty vague, and I apologize because I stepped all over Max. So go ahead, Max.
That's okay. I'm not going to beat around the bush here. Ha ha! Okay. Anyways, so I'm not a doctor. Nobody else here is really a doctor. Sorry, Dr. Random Cam, but
It's
the
true.
thing is,
I'm not a real doctor.
you're not a real doctor?
Sorry to disappoint everyone. It's just a stupid name.
I was just.
And Typhon's not a real Typhon.
And I'm not a real Simpsons kid. Anyways, I'm not a medical professional.
Yeah, but Brian is a doge.
Yes.
About that, I do not lie. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, so none of us are medical professionals. So what I would just sort of suggest is maybe go to somebody that is and ask them if the stuff that you're hearing is actually true. Based on what I was just able to pull up on Google with the word masturbation in the search engine, I went to menshealth.com and lists 5 health benefits of masturbation. Now, speaking of your mood and feeling depressed, the fifth benefit that they listed was that it boosts your mood. Now, let me just read what it says here, just for your own personal information. Masturbating releases a slew of feel-good neurochemicals like dopamine and oxytocin that lift your spirits, boost your satisfaction, and activate the reward circuits in your brain. Along with that, it also ups your immunity, apparently. It prevents cancer, and there are a bunch of other articles that you can look at with just a basic Google search, like this one from Cosmopolitan that lists 8, Mind Body Green that lists 10. Just make sure that you're clear on what is true and what isn't before you join something as absolutely depressing sounding as the Nofap community. Like, I kick it like Genghis Khan. I just go like 10 times a day. But anyways, that's irrelevant. Anybody else have anything they want to say?
Yeah. Well, I'm the one thing I'm taking from that I think kind of stands out for me, aside from the bit that Mike pointed out, was also the bit where he says, I feel like I should apologize for asking about a subject that is a bit gross, but all aspects of male sexuality are gross in the modern lens, aren't they? And I did say early on that it's not gross to do it, but I think it's important to drive home because there is a chance, I don't know, because I'm just learning about this community now, that part of the Nofap community's idea is could be rooted in the idea that masturbation is gross. Does the Nofap community, by the way, are there women in there that are trying to abstain from schlicking?
That would be no schlick then.
That would be the no flick community, yeah. Oh, the no schlick community. Is there a no schlick community? Are there women in there? If not, if it's mainly men, then why is that? I would ask. I would put it out there that it's important to understand that male masturbation is natural and normal. Guys need it. I think they need the release. I mean, I'd be happy to look at any science or anything that anyone who comments in the video wants to offer that counters it. That's fine. I'd like to look at it. But as my understanding goes, as Max pointed out, there are health benefits to it. We guys, we all need a hand from time to time, as it were, and so we just gotta keep.
Yeah, it's anthropically explained. I'm pretty sure we're the only primate species who can, insofar as we're the only one primate species whose dick fits inside one's own hand quite so perfectly. So we're the only primate species that is free to do that, rather than they have to find the exact right-shaped hole. We can form the exact right-shaped hole.
No, actually, chimps masturbate quite a bit too. So do spider monkeys, and
really,
anything with hands tends to figure it out fairly quickly.
Doctor, Can you explain to me how you came across this information?
It came into my head now, if you'll pardon the pun once again.
You mean it came out of your head?
But I don't think it's surprising that history is littered with attempts to stop men from masturbating, because it's such a healthy and accessible alternative to having sex with women. And I think, as a lot of us have discovered to some extent, a lot of this empire is built on making men desire nothing more than putting their penis in a woman.
Yeah. but essentially working on
this is something that's surely unique to humans in some sense in that area, right?
Yeah.
It's actually unique to this, not just unique to humans, but unique to this particular era as well.
Oh. I would also add that there is a negative stigma associated with men who masturbate. It suggests that a man who masturbates cannot find a woman. That is a shaming tactic that, for whatever reason, we have adopted. That doesn't generally apply to women, and I think that the Nofap community could theoretically possibly be responding to that. But that doesn't matter. In the case of Lucian, I would say that it's important for you to understand that there's no shame in that. And that just because you do that doesn't mean that, you're a loser or you can't find a woman or whatever. That is bullshit. I mean, guys that get laid all the time still jerked off too. So it's not a measure of your worth as a human being whether or not, you masturbate. We all do it. I mean, in general, we all do it. So
even Pope Francis.
To some degree,
probably not actually. Please don't kill me for like blasphemy or something.
To some degree, this has all been sort of a very careful pincer movement to try and make men aware that their seed and their sperm is toxic to women and everyone and everything in the world. But you should never spill a single drop of it because it's precious.
Yes. You have to use it wisely. Like it's some limited resource.
Well, I think that actually, I mean, just at the risk of making all the Christians angry, or maybe not, the early church was originally very, very much against any kind of sex, including sex and marriage, until they realized that tends to make it difficult to grow.
Mm-hmm.
And then they started to say, okay, sex for procreation, that's okay. So that this combination of sex is evil and should never be done, but for procreation is sort of applied later. So never spill your seed, but every seed is sacred. Your seed is toxic because it creates life, and life is perpetuating the misery of the earth. They're very nihilistic, the early Christians. But at the same time, when they realized, our congregations need to be filled with the next generation, then they sort of embraced, but it's okay if you're making kids, if you're making new Christians.
Again, anthropically explained, the religions that didn't figure this out died very quickly.
Yeah, it originally came from an aesthetic thing where, you weren't supposed to do anything sexual and life is bad and stuff like that. I don't even know if that's early Christian church, but just something that was related to. Yeah, it was interesting. It was interesting times. Everyone had a theology and they were all competing. Anyway, I'll step away from it now that I've probably offended everyone.
No, it's fine. Or you think that you just made the whole our entire Christian audience angry with that one?
You're either making the religious people angry or the atheists angry. They're all a bunch of angry people. We appreciate you all. We really do.
Yeah.
Yes, we do. Love you all. Keep sending us angry screeds about how we are simultaneously insulting the conservatives in our audience and the liberals in our audience and the atheists in our audience and the Christians in our audience and also everybody else in our audience that's directly diametrically opposed to everyone else who's diametrically opposed to that original group. Like, we're basically just insult you all.
If there's anyone we're not offending, please do speak up, because we're not doing our job properly.
Yeah, we're starting a new thing, intersectional offense. So we're trying to sit at the crossroads of every possible worldview, where the hate starts, where the butthurt is. We are if the anus is made up of several intersecting lines, we're like right at the center of that rosebud.
Yes. we're the font of offense. So if there's anybody out there listening to this who isn't offended by us, please drop us a line and tell us how we could rectify that.
Or just wait.
Rectify that.
Yeah. Or just just wait. It'll happen.
Yeah, the offense bus will pull in the next 5 minutes, no doubt.
All right.
Should we give them a topic at BadgerPod if you have any questions, that kind of thing?
Yeah. Should we wait? Did you just do that? Or do I?
I think so.
Okay. Yeah, if you want us to read your mail, send us something to topic@badgerpod.com, and we'll read it on the next bi-weekly episode of TopKekTopics. And yeah, that's until then. I want to thank Allison, Max, and Dr. Random McCann for taking the time to come out and speak to these wonderful letters about drinks and jerking off. Only on Honey Badger Radio will you get such topics. So,
Hooray for cuts!
yeah.
Oh shit, cut that.